Hello everyone. In this video we're going to be talking about the anatomy of the tympanic membrane. So we're going to be looking at the anatomy, the function and the innervation of the tympanic membrane. So let's start. So first we need to know the exact location of the tympanic membrane. Here we have a cross section of the ear. This part is the external ear, which I have discussed in my previous videos. This part is the middle ear and this is the inner ear. So the tympanic membrane is located here, right in the middle of the external ear and the middle ear. So let's zoom into this part and see it in more detail. So here I have isolated that part. So this again is the EAC and this is the middle ear which contains the ossicles. So now I will remove the EAC and let's see each part. So this is the malleus, which is the first of the three ossicles. And this is the handle of malleus which pulls the tympanic membrane inside the middle ear. And due to this, the tympanic membrane is a little concave in shape. It is not completely straight. Now let's look at the structure of the tympanic membrane. Now again, this is a cross section of the ear, and let's imagine you're cruising around and you stand in the EAC. So you're looking at the tympanic membrane from this direction. So what is it that you're exactly going to see? So this is what you're going to see, and now let's look at each part in detail. So this is the bony annulus, and by this part, the tympanic membrane is attached to the walls of the EAC. Then we have the pars flaccida and the pars tensa, and in a minute we'll see why they are named so. Then we have the handle of malleus, and we have the umbo, which is the tip of the handle of malleus. Lastly, we have the cone of light. So cone of light is not a part of the tympanic membrane. Whenever you're doing an otoscopic examination and you're flashing light into the EAC, so because of the direction of the tympanic membrane and the shape of the tympanic membrane, there will be a cone-shaped reflection of light which will appear in the anterior inferior quadrant of the tympanic membrane. Now let's look at some numbers. So the thickness of the tympanic membrane is 0.1 millimeters and the surface area is about 90 millimeters square. Now the pars flaccida is named so because the fibrous layer here is very scanty and unorganized, and the pars tensa has a good organized fibrous layer. And last, one important one-liner, the umbo, which was the tip of the handle of malleus, is the most visible landmark. Next, the tympanic membrane is at an angle of 55 degrees with the floor of the EAC. So again, this is just a representation. Here we have the EAC and the tympanic membrane. So this angle is 55 degrees. So the tympanic membrane can be divided into 4 quadrants, and these are anterior-superior quadrant, anterior-inferior, posterior-inferior and posterior-superior quadrant. Now this is what a real tympanic membrane looks like, and here you can see all the same parts as we saw in the other picture. So we can see the bony annulus, the pars flaccida, tensa, we can see the handle of malleus, cone of light, everything. Now what are the functions of the tympanic membrane? So the tympanic membrane transmits the sound from the air to the ossicles, which are then transmitted to the oval window. By this, the vibration in the air is transmitted to the fluid which is inside the cochlea, and then the impulses are sent to the brain through the nerves. We will cover this in my other video on mechanism of hearing. But for now, just trust me that vibrations in the air are transmitted through the tympanic membrane and the ossicles into the cochlea. So ultimately, it converts and amplifies vibration from the air to the fluid in the cochlea. So this is just another representation. When there will be vibrations in the sound, so they will be transmitted to the tympanic membrane, which will also vibrate. Then the vibrations are transmitted to the ossicles, which is transmitted to the oval window. So the oval window vibrates and the fluid inside the cochlea will also vibrate. Next, the innervation on the tympanic membrane. So the tympanic membrane has different innervations on the medial side and the lateral side. So let's see those one by one. So again, imagine you're standing in the EAC and you're looking at the tympanic membrane through this direction. So this is what the tympanic membrane will look like, and this is called the lateral side of the tympanic membrane. So if you'll divide the tympanic membrane like this, the posterior side of the tympanic membrane is supplied by the Arnold's nerve and the anterior part is supplied by the auriculotemporal nerve, which is a branch of the V3. Next, imagine you're standing inside the middle ear and now you're looking at the tympanic membrane through this direction. So now let's imagine that this circle is the tympanic membrane for now. So this will be called the medial side. So this whole medial side of the tympanic membrane is supplied by the Jacobson's nerve, which is a branch of the ninth cranial nerve. Now there are two differences that you should know about, and although unlikely, but these might come as image based questions for you in the exam. So imagine you have two tympanic membranes. How will you know which one is the left tympanic membrane and which one is the right? So you will have to look at the cone of light. If it is at 7 o'clock position, it is the left tympanic membrane. And if the cone of light is at the 5 o'clock position, it is the right tympanic membrane. Now we're almost at the end of our video. Is there any clinical importance to this cone of light? Yes, because if you're doing an examination and if you don't see the cone of light, it indicates that there is some disease with the tympanic membrane. So there may be perforation or fibrosis or some other disease, but the tympanic membrane is most likely not normal. So that's it for this video. Please follow my Instagram. I upload daily questions there which are related to these topics and different topics. And if you have any doubts, so please leave them in the comments or you can DM me on Instagram anytime. Thank you.